Okay, we are in Daas Tevunos. So last time, okay, let's just remind ourselves where we are, right? So he told us the conclusion of, the one lesson right before that. He's told us Vanachnu ad ata dibarnu b'klal, that until now we have spoken in general terms. Ata tzorech levoy laprotim, and now we have to drill down into the details. And in the drill down into the details says that basically we have to discuss three different times. We have to discuss the nature of the world at the time of Nister, right? When Hashem's Yichud is hidden. Then we have to discuss the world after Hashem's Yichud is revealed. And then we have to discuss the bridge between the two worlds. Okay? And then last time he sidetracked into a Hagdama, where that in which he basically outlined our inability to really comprehend the Kadosh Baruch Hu's nature, right, and how we can only kind of see him, quote unquote, through his actions. And we can't even understand the process of those actions. We can only see the footprints, the impacts of those actions. Right? That's where we concluded. Right? So potentially, at first glance, maybe it was just more like a quote unquote frum introduction, meaning so we don't get wrong ideas about what he's about to tell us, right? But I don't think so, because he says, so the last line of that Hagdama, this is right before the letter Mem Zayin. You have numbers, right? You have numbers in your text?
Yeah. Yep.
I think it's right before, the line before Mem Zayin, he says, V'hinei ad heina, ad heina hagdamti loch hagdama, right? Until here is my hagdama, right? Shehitzricha l'kol ma shenasok bo b'vikuchenu zeh, which is necessary for everything that we're going to discuss in this. It's funny that he uses the word vikuchenu, because the word vikuach translates as debate. So I don't think he means debate, right? It's funny. I don't know how does the English translate. Our discussion, right?
Right.
So vikuchenu maybe could be discussion also, but vikuach is generally, there's a Hebrew expression, right? Al tam varech ein lehitvakeach, which means regarding taste and smell, there is no debates, right? Basically, this, right? So vikuach, okay, so whatever. So anyways, the bottom line is he's saying that this is Hagdama, which is very necessary for our discussion further on. So now we can continue onto our journey. Okay? That's where we're up to, I believe, right? So Omra Neshama, so Neshama responds, Shamati, I heard, U'misyashim advarim alai. And these ideas, these words are what's the word? Are acceptable to me. Okay? Because it's impossible to rest when you ponder aspects of creation without knowing that there is an Ilah, meaning that there is a creator, umanhig, and a conductor, kach poshut u'meroimam, who is purely simple and purely lofty, and completely removed, lofty, kol yochel, all able, u'beloy shum hechrach, u'kfiyah, who is not forced, right, and has not forced by any other external source, v'zulas zeh, and without that being, ein yishuv ubir l'roi b'seikos u'tniyot. It's impossible to really understand many of the questions that arise in analysis of the nature of the world, right? So again, this is a basic idea that I think we mentioned already before, that and this is the Rambam's worldview, kind of, that when you look at the world and you see all of these beings, and you says, well, what was the cause of that being? And you go to the primary cause, but the way you do that is by removing all of the imperfections that exist in the world, because an imperfect thing cannot be independent. So you go until you remove all. So there has to be, so to speak, in the back and behind everything, there has to be that primary mover, that first mover that is free from all imperfections. And all imperfections means complexity, dependence, right? Any kind of imperfection. And without that, you can't really understand the world, because the world makes no sense. Where did it come from? Why does it exist? Why does it exist in this form, etc., etc.? Okay, so that's the neshama. So neshama says that okay, that's meaning that this introduction is necessary to just understand the basic framework within which the world works. Okay, fine, moving on. But we'll see if it's more than that. So now we go to this memches Omer HaSeichel, right? So this is the new kind of topic. So right, so Hasmana Rishon Sheyesh Lanu Levayer Ata Hu Zman Esalim Yichud Yisborach Kiyam Hazeh. Right, so first we have to now drill down again. Remember, we're drilling down. So which time we're first going to drill down? We're going to drill down into our present time, which is the time of the hiddenness of the Yechudai. Hu Klau Zman Avodas HaAdam, which is the time for the avoida of the person, right? Like we explained. V'hinei Michoy Shlei Musai, from the nature of God's perfection, we already said, He could have made all of His actions perfect. And there would be nothing in His actions except total goodness and total perfection. Without any chisaron and evil at all. Right? Amnam, however, since He wanted to conduct Himself with the creations in this type of anhaga, this type of conducting that we already mentioned, in other words, the anhaga that allows for them freedom of choice and etc. Right? Seder Chodesh Mamish. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu established a totally new Seder, a totally new
order.
Right, order. Shaloi Kedas HaShleimus HaElyon, that is completely not like the nature of His perfection. Elamai D'tzricha Libriyasa, but rather He created whatever is necessary for the creations. L'seis lehem schus u'schar tov b'achrisum, in order to give them schus and schar, merit and reward, good merit and reward in their end. V'hu derech ha'tov ha'ara, and that's the way of tov ha'ara, right? So He created the world, the present world, of way of tov ha'ara, haschar v'ha'onish, reward and punishment. Shelefi ha'derech hazeh, again, He keeps using this word derech in this section, which is interesting.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that. I'm reminded, I'm not sure what to do with it right now, but let's just shelve it for now, that He keeps using, with regards to talking of this world, He keeps using the word derech. According to this way, good and evil are shkulim. Shkulim means they are balanced. Right? So the note over here points out, obviously He's speaking in the initial state of creation. The initial state of creation, good and evil was balanced. And they both enter into this world. And the good is ready for those that are good, just like evil is ready for those that are evil. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe it's just a turn of phrase. I'm assuming he means, meaning the people who turn to evil are evil, but not that they are evil before they turn to evil, right? Even though that's what it sounds like. Mizumen hatoiv latoivim v'ra l'roim. The good is presented for the good people, and the evil is presented for the bad people. That's what it sounds like, but I'm assuming that's not
so
what it
within
means.
reach.
It's just that, right, that it's just within reach, correct. Well, so according to this way, sometimes it comes out that the creations, sometimes they are miskalkulois, they degrade themselves. Sometimes they rectify themselves. And permission is given to Satan to lahastin. What does that mean? How do you say lahastin? To pull away, to entice, to it doesn't translate. Just to corrupt. Let's just say to corrupt.
It's given to accuse and force, to accuse and to the force of destruction to destroy.
Right. So to accuse. Okay, he uses to accuse, but I think it means to corrupt. Although v'nitna reshus l'satan l'hastin u'lemashchis l'chabel, and to the mashchis, to the destroyer, to hurt, to damage. As asher yashirun elokim. Whoever Hashem finds to be a rasha, to find guilty. V'nimtzu, maybe it's accused, right? V'nimtzu umois ha'olam v'oivdei avodah zarah, and in such a world you'll find nations of the world and idol worshippers. Mm-hmm. So that's also an interesting that he says it that way. Meaning, does he mean to say Umaysa Oilam that are idol worshippers? Or does he mean to say, like literally, that they are Umaysa Oilam and idol worshippers, and they belong, right? And he says, V'chein kol shar harois, and all such like evils, kulam asher ba'olam, that all exist in the world, shaleihim bo haftochas neviim, leim shalom, lehavira min ha'olam, that the Nevi'im promised, right, that they will be removed from the world in the future, right? So, is he talking about umas ha'olam also being removed, or just umas ha'olam that don't meet the quota or whatever the challenge? Let's see what it says here. And room is provided for the nations of the world, the worshippers of idols, and all of they kind of bypass, and all of the other evils in the world in relation to whose ultimate removal were stated the assurances of our prophets of blessed memory. How does your translation sound?
Our prophets have assured us, however, that all these
before the prophets.
And such a system allows the existence of the nation of the world and idol worshippers and all other evils.
So very clear and. So my translation skipped the word and, even though in the Hebrew it's v. This translation skipped the word and it reads, right? And it reads, room. And room is provided for the nations of the world, the worshippers of idols, and all other evils in the world. So it could be nations of the world, the worshippers of who are worshippers of idols.
Or it could be nations of the world, worshippers of idols, firefighters,
Right. Which more sounds like all nations of the world, because in essence, all nations of the world are elements of imperfection. Meaning, if there's a tree trunk, right, and the middle path, the trunk represents the balance of all different midos, which represents Klal Yisrael, right? Where any deviation from the balance, even if it's the deviation of chesed, too much chesed, so to speak, is also an imperfection, right? And certainly too much gvura is an imperfection. But do you need both of those elements are godly? Definitely, right? But if you take any one of them to some extreme, so then they become elements of imperfection. Right, the idea of midas, as the Rambam tells us, is to be b'derech hamemutza, is to be in that middle path, right? And middle path doesn't mean always sticking to the middle path, meaning being flexible enough to know when you have to be like Judaism wants you to be a midas gymnast, to be able to contort yourself into different configurations whenever the need requires. While the other nations, Shivim Umayis, they represent different branches from that middle path, right? Which is also why, I think, why, for example, there is actual tension between Jews and other nations, because they represent, meaning as humans internalize fully some concept that exists in the world, and if that concept becomes at some point antithetical to what we're trying to accomplish. So sometimes we align, perhaps, because they're not completely, every human being obviously represents some aspect of godliness, and so sometimes our goals could align, but at other times they represent the very thing that we're trying to not do. Right? Because we are trying not to go in that direction, because we are trying to keep a balanced system, right? To be the perfect lens that reveals godliness in the world, and their nature, for whatever, again, historical reasons, because they didn't have an Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov who overcame. They didn't have Kabbalah Satar. They didn't have those experiences which we went through, right? They didn't have the Golus that we suffered through, so to speak. That was our what we call Kura Barzel, the iron furnace, right? So in a sense, that tension is how should I say it? It's intrinsic. It's not an accident that it's an accident that we're not in tension. The tension is part and parcel of just who we are. Anyway, so back to my point here is. But it's hard from our perspective to imagine. 8 billion people in the world, that they all represent, an imperfection. So what's the point? Unless there is a way for tikkun. And again, remember, we really had this problem already back in Derech Hashem. We didn't fully understand how Ramchal sees, the whole non-Jews in his picture. So. Fine. Anyways, so here it is. Again, this it's not clear here either. Okay. So, but in any case, leaving that topic aside, there is in the world imperfection that needs to be removed, as promised by our Nevi'im. As it says, "V'ha elilim kolil yachloif." So it brings now psukim from different places, from Yeshayahu and Zechariah. And the idols will pass entirely away, right? So that's the first thing. The halilim are the idols, so they're going to be kalil. They're going to be totally destroyed, right? So that's the first thing. Then he says the next pasuk he brings bila hamoves lanetzach. No, I'm sorry. V'esruach atuma avir min haaretz, and then the ruach atuma I will remove from the earth. Okay. The next pasuk is Bila Hamovis Lenetzach. Hashem will be swallow up Bila, right? Swallow up death forever. So I'm not sure where death comes into this picture, because he didn't discuss death yet at all. Right? There was nothing about death. There was only a question of schar v'oinish, right? There was death. So where was death? Where was death in the previous sentences? The death was, right, v'nitna harishus l'sotan l'hastin u'lemashchis l'chabel. So the destroyer is the death. So the destroyer will be removed. So it seems like the psukim, if you want to trace, it looks like the psukim are in reverse order. The last thing he said was avodah zarah. That is represented by the first pasuk. Right. The previous thing he talked about Umas Ha'olam. I think that's Ruach Hatuma Avir Min Ha'aretz. They represent the Ruach Hatuma. Then the previous thing talked about Mashchis Lechavel, and that's Bila Hamovis Lenetzach. And then all of that ability to do evil, then he says Lo Yeruvu Lo Yashchisu B'Hol Harkachi, right? Which means that they shall work no evil or corruption on all of my holy mountain. Okay, good. So that's the end of that, right? So that's the removal. Now he switches back. Please, that's what about the fact that at the present moment, until those prophecies occur, we have something else about Pid Haderech. But now, according to the way, Hakol B'dei Shamayim, Chutz B'Yiras Shamayim. Right now, everything is in the hands of heaven except what? Yiras Shamayim. Again, why is he bringing that? Is to tell us again back to this idea that Bezmana, right now, the present moment, we have full freedom of choice. Hakol B'dei Shamayim Chutz B'Yiras Shamayim. She'ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu roitz le'akev klum. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not want to prevent anything b'yad b'nei Adam, from the hands of man. Im roitzim lekalkel ma'aseim, if they want to destroy their own actions, right? If they want to act degradingly, they have full freedom to degrade themselves. U'mizeh noildu kol ha'kilkulim ha'gdolim asher hoyu ba'olam min yom bro Elokim Adam. And from this freedom, right, arises all of the kilkulim, all of the destruction that exists in the world from the day that Hashem created mankind. Ve'ein menucha l'tzadikim b'olam hazeh. And there's no rest in the world for tzadikim in this world. Ve'ein menucha l'tzadikim b'olam hazeh. I don't know what is he bringing that for. Where did menucha l'tzadikim come in? Ki ro'as ha'odam rabo olav. Because the evil of mankind increases on him. On whom? On tzaddikim. V'asotan mekaltrik b'chol shor. And the Satan criticizes, right, every moment and every hour. V'akodesh Baruch Hu medaktik im chasidav kuchet asayra. And Hashem is medaktik with his pious one, like a hairbreadth, right? Yeah. What is he? When did we switch here? Because I switched here, no?
Yeah.
We switched to tzaddikim. Before we were talking about human race in general, or Jews in general, and now he switched to tzaddikim. So I guess he's referring maybe to Klal Yisrael as tzaddikim, I'm not sure. Right? V'amech kulam tzaddikim, right? So Klal Yisrael have no rest because they're constantly surrounded by challengers. That's right? And as a result of that, they're constantly, walking a tightrope, and while everybody else is trying to push them off one way or another, right? Zeh klal haderech. Again, this is the general way. Asher chidosh harotzon ha'elyon, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu lofty will was mechadish lefi inyan hisalam shlituso v'yichudoi, according to the idea of his hiding his control and his onlyness. Vein derech, again, and this is a tolui ele behester pnei tuva yisborach, and this derech is dependent upon him hiding his goodness. Because if he would want to reveal his true dominion, he would remove instantly these evils. They would only remain good and rectification, like he actually will do in the future. Okay, right? So far, so good.
Yeah.
With the ioid and no more. Kivadai gam ata afal pishe helim tuvoy umona choik shleimusa min hanevroim. Now know this, that even though now at the present moment that we know that he had hid his goodness from and his perfection from the Nivroim, from the creations. Afal pi kain, even still, vadai hushu mashpia lehem. It is certain that Hashem is still providing hashpah, his energy to them. Ki me'ayin lehem havaya u'metzius v'kiyum. Because how is it? Where would they get their source of existence and their sustenance? Im lo mehashpa'asa, if not from his hashpah. Right? In other words, without Hashem's presence, nothing can exist. With Hashem's presence, in other words, perfection, only perfection can exist, right? Or not, or nothing. Really, nothing can exist also. But meaning, so even at the darkest hour, there still has to be some element of Hashem's presence. Im kain. So if so, vadei mashpiyahu. So certainly, Hashem has to be mashpiyah. However, the hashpah the emanation, the influence, the energy that he's providing now, legabe ma shehoya roy le'ashpia, as it relates to what it was possible to be mashpia, if he would want to be mashpia according to his actual nature, it could only be comparable to a shadow as it relates to a human being, right? The human being is got all of these features and is 3D and all of that, but you only see a shadow on the floor. So in other words, the Hashem's presence that exists in this world is so minute, right? Just barely enough to keep this world running. Or we could also compare it to a small imprint, right? That remains from the writing al aniyar on a paper after the letters were erased from that. So basically, it is like a what? Like a minor imprint of the Hashem's actual hashpah. V'nikra klal min hashpah zois. Now this is telling us that this type of hashpah, the present day hashpah, is called choshech v'loy or, darkness and not light. Right? Again, what does mean v'nikra? Who calls it that? Who calls it darkness? I mean, we're calling it darkness, right? That's his vayi erev vayi boiker, right? In other words, Hashem created the world. The present world is called the world of darkness. When we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Echad at night, right? That's really what we're saying. We're saying that even now, in this state of darkness, in the present day of the world, Hashem is. We Jews testify that Hashem is still one, right? But the present day of the world is technically choshech. Which when you compare it, it's darkness when you compare it to the hashlema, the perfection hashpah that was able to be created by Hashem. If he would actually create according to his perfect level. However, with regards to our existence, al kol ponim ze kol chayenu, that's all we have. Our entire existence is this hashpah. It might be minimal to what is possible, but everything that we actually have is from this hashpah. Through this hashpah, we exist and we are maintained. Without not anything else. So it comes out shekashenazkir min hashpah zois hamechudeshes behester pnei tuvoy nikreehu b'klal echad. So when we're talking about this hashpah, which was created from the hiding of Hashem's perfection and goodness, so we're going to call it from one aspect. We're going to call it tzel hakoyach ha'elyon, like a shadow of the potential power, levad lo yoser, nothing else. Ubehispartoi leprotav. However, when you drill down even at the present hashpah, right? So even though the present hashpah in general is just a shadow, but when you drill down into that shadow, you still see, he says, nimtza boy kol hachukim v'hamishpatim asher mavchinim anachnu b'hanhaga ha'elyoina. You will be able to find within that shadow the different laws that we distinguish in the hanhaga ha'elyoina, in the lofty conduct. Meaning, in other words, that even though the present day hashpah is what's the word? Is just a remnant of what could be, but even with that remnant, you will see different aspects of godliness, just on a miniature level. In other words, it's not just here's some kind of a hashpah that's now. It's the same hashpah that would have been in Olam Haba, let's say, right? Only just toned down for this world. So if you see Hashem's Chesed, you see Hashem's Gvura, you see Hashem's Emes, you see Hashem's Rachamim, everything is there in that hashpah too, just on a very, minute, minor, barely there level. They're just together. They're a very small thing when you compare it. If you compare it to what Hashem could have done with His perfection. Okay, so in other words, that's going to be an important point. So even though it's that at the present day, in that barely there hashpah, there are aspects, there's seeds of every Hashem's kind of quality that could exist. Va'amnam, however, since the ultimate kavana is the revelation of the yichud, and not the hiding of the yichud, we explained above, because the hiding of is an intermediary, right? It's the medium for the accomplishment of the yichud. That's why it exists, because you allow the imperfection to exist, because the imperfection is only a stepping stone to perfection. So if the imperfection is just bringing you to perfection, so therefore it's not really imperfection. It's really just a tool.
Step to perfection.
Right. Since it's only a tool to get to the gilui. Al kain afal pisha histirpon of lechadish boidover hanhagas toivaral hazois. So even though Hakadosh Baruch Hu hid His face in order to create this new hanhaga of toivara, of good and evil, shov al kolponim v'hishki v'midas tuvoy. However, He kind of circled back, okay, and He he looked at it through His lens of goodness, and also through his nature of total domination, lahashlim sibuv kol hanoga hazois b'tikun kloli, to perfect the spiral of all of this hanhaga through the tikkun kloli. I think he's going to elaborate on this one. V'zedover poshut, because this is a simple matter, kikvar shamat, because you already heard eich ketz som lechoshech, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, set up end to the darkness, zeh shalatoi v'ara, kol zman shashisus alfish shnin, which is the 6,000 years. Ukvar gozer mireishis acheris, and he already decreed from the beginning the end, asher tichlena kolela, that this stage has to end. And then Hashem's oneness or onlyness will remain revealed. And the goodness of the world will be permanently set forever and ever. Imkain, right? What he's trying to say now, again, I just want to speak it out. What he's trying to say now is that Hashem created the world of Hester Panim, right, of Tovara, but then which has the elements of everything in potential, but only in a small way. But then He went back and kind of put a secondary code, let's say, into that system that's going to, from within the first system, create the transformation into a new system. Right? So let's do computer programming language, right? So there's a program running, right? The program running, okay? And there's a secondary program that's built into the first program that actually goes and modifies the initial program in order to bring it back to a third program that's going to be a better program, right? So there's two programs. This is the present day and the future day, and then there is the middle program, which takes the ideas of the future, but actually brings it out from the code of the present, right? So that's what he's saying, that he went back to the present code of Tovara, but looked at it from Hanhaga of Shlita, of dominion, of Mamshala, and was able to inject into it that Hanhaga of Mamshala, that second level of Hanhaga. He injected it into the initial stage. Right? So that's so, since that code is injected into it, Imkain, Kol Yom V'Yom She'over, any day that passes, Nimtza Ha'olam Korev Yoiser Shlemusa. So really, every day that passes, the world is closer, one day closer to its perfection. Okay? Yeah?
Yeah. So then why are we sweating here?
Yeah, because the perfection causes it will end. It's close to perfection, close to its end. At the same time.
Well, it's basically, it seems to be, again, we'll see in a second, because we'll see that's a contradiction to what he said before. But in a second, I'm going to see that. But it's basically, again, Hashem is a master judo, so to speak, right? So in other words, the world is coming to attack him, so to speak, and he backs away, and everything looks like, he's getting hurt, but you don't realize, I'm using the parable of Judah, right? He seems to be down, but what you don't realize, this was just a master trick where he's just using your energy to just go poof, and flip you right back, right? So, in other words, on one hand, it looks like, well, right, because if you look back where he talks about Adam Arishon, all right, if you look back where he talks about Adam Arishon, he says something else. He said, this is Ois number, hold on. To find it. Okay, 1 second. Yeah. So he talks about how Adam Arishon fell into the trap, right? And as a result, this whole enterprise of the 6,000 years kind of went into effect, right? And then his descendants, right, also had many opportunities to recognize the truth, right, and they could have stopped the experience. But they were not zoichet in their actions. But rather they went after the falsehood that appears to their eyes, right? Just like Adam went after the falsehood that appeared to his eyes. In these 5 different wrong approaches to Hashem. So now Hashem is going to reveal to them what they don't realize. And this is going to be done through this golus. That Hashem hid, double hiding, right? That the evil strengthened so much to the point where it's a great strengthening. And that our sages say, there is no day, right? That its birchosai, which is a euphemism for curse, right? That its curse is not stronger than the previous day, right? And in the end, pisam, suddenly, right? And Hashem will return and reveal himself and will come back to his temple and whatever, and everybody will see. So the pasuk, so he's bringing us to over here. He told us that every day is worse than the previous day, right? And over here, he's telling us every day is closer to the Geula, and every day is a step towards Tikkun, right? Tikkun HaKlali. So which one is it? Is it a step towards Tikkun, or is it a step towards, or is this, is an additional curse? Right? So which one is it? Right? So again, on one hand, the truth is, if you think about it, I think you could see both. Right? On one hand, we see how modern society is bettering in certain aspects, but then we can see how modern society is also degrading in certain aspects. So the truth is, we do see both of these processes happening side by side, right? On one hand, we have all of this intellectual explosion, right? And we have access to these ideas that the ancients, let's say, didn't have, right? And we have tools that the ancients didn't have, and yet at the same time, those tools are leading us to the most insane degradations ever, right? And the most cruel evils ever, right? So it's weird, right? So so we do see it on one hand side by side, but like I said, I think maybe the idea is that, being that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is like I said, is a perfect judo master, meaning every evil can be flipped around and turned around. So even though we don't see it right now, because when you're when you're punching your opponent, you're thinking you're about to cause some damage, and all of a sudden, boom, you realize that the very force that you've used to punch your opponent, he just turned against you, right? So, okay, so that's the beauty of the system, right? So there's a system in place, schar v'oinish, and then there is a third system. There's a second system. Let's say for right now, there's a second system that's using that, and that your very bechira, which has the ability to do good and to do evil, that very bechira is being used to bring the world closer to Tikkun HaKlali. Okay. Let's see. So good. So that's where we are. Let's just finish up. Right. So imkein kol yom v'yom she'over. So every day that passes, nimtza ha'olam korev yoyser el shlemusay. The world is one day closer to its perfection. V'loy oid, and not only that, elak she'Hakadosh Baruch Hu misibois mishapech be'oimek atzosay. Right. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for his reasons, he kind of turns things with the depth of his counsel, umegalgel gilgulim tamid, and is constantly turning things around, lahavi ha'olam el shleimus hazeh, to bring the world into this shleimus. V'hu ma she'omer HaKosov, and this is what the pasuk is saying. Rabbois asisa ato Hashem elokeinu flesecha machshavosecha aleinu. There are many great things that you've done, and your wonders and your thoughts are towards us. That Hashem's counsel is very distant, right? Hashem has thoughts that nobody should be pushed away, right? Certainly, Hashem doesn't want to hold on to this derech, to this way of good and evil, kol kach zman, so much time. He doesn't want that 6,000 years of Tov Ra should elapse, and then suddenly he turns the switch, Ad Kan, and now we're doing the derech HaMemshala v'Hayichud. Now it's the period of dominion. Okay, the period of play is over. The period of dominion is begun. Meaning, why doesn't he want to do that? Because then he appears like a person who kind of just changed his mind. And it's meaning it has to be very clear that the whole process of 6,000 years was a necessary stepping stone to the process that follows, right? Because otherwise it just looks like, okay, we did this for a while, we got bored, let's do something else for a while. Meaning it has to be specifically a transition process, because that actually is a stronger revelation of his yichud. Right? Rather, from this depth of his counsel, he turns things around so much that from within the good and evil itself, we will get to this, in the end, to this thing, that everything will be perfected, and rather Hashem will reveal his yichud. That's going to be explained even more. So now what he's saying is basically a crazy thing. So I had this conversation just recently with somebody, is that initially, and I was wrong when I said before with somebody, but initially I thought, Hashem's gilui, what's the nature of Hashem's gilui? Is that I'm in control. I'm in control would mean really, even if you don't deserve anything, even if you guys are totally evil, it doesn't make a difference. I'm going to come in and say, I'm the boss here, and I do it the way I please it, right? Okay? And then he said, but there's another possibility. The other possibility is we are zoicha to bring him about, right? We ourselves, and therefore we bring his yichud about. Mm-hmm. Now the truth is what I'm thinking, is that which one of these two, right, if the ultimate Hashem wants to be Megala his yichud, which one of these two ways, possibilities, right? He told us there are two ways to get to this Gil of yichud, either through our schus, or even despite our chayva, right? So which one is more of a revelatory of his yichud? I would say, if Hashem comes in, even despite the fact that we don't deserve it, he's going to blast through this thing and say, I'm here, and this is my business, and I don't care, right? Right. So then, and especially looking at history, I'm thinking to myself, it seems like everything's getting worse, nothing's getting better. I mean, and I would say, you know what? We're not bringing Mashiach. Just one day, Hashem will say, guys, okay, I gave you a chance, you blew it. That's okay. I'm coming in, right? But now it seems to me what Ramchal is saying. No, both. The crazy, the oimek atzosa will happen that both of these two things will take place. It will be our schus, and it will be despite our chayva. It will be both of these things will exist at the same time. Meaning, just like we said right now, that on one hand, the world is getting worse and worse. On the other hand, the world is getting better and better. Both of these things exist. And that both of these things will be true when HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the end will come and reveal his goodness. He will reveal it in such a way, like I said, that all of the evil that is happening in the world will be flipped, like with judo, and all of the goodness in the world will provide, I guess, the energy to make the flip possible. So both things will coexist. So in other words, it will be better than just completely tearing the whole world apart, and it will be better than saying, okay, you guys will zoiche to the yichud. It will be both. It will be, at the same time, it will be our schus, and at the same time, it's going to be totally not our schus. That's my working thesis at this point, at the present. That the ability of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is to, like he says, misgalgal gilgulim, and misibo is to turn things around in such a way that it will be both from our schusim and both despite our chayvus at the same time.
So if we take this big model down to an individual person, right? Person dies, has his judgment. He still died, regardless of all his big accomplishments. He was a big tzaddik, right? So both the inevitable end came and big analysis of his righteous deeds is done. I'm talking of positive guys as an example, right?
Right. So I'm not sure. You were asking a question. I didn't hear a question.
No, but it doesn't sound like exactly
every
the same thing
person,
on a greater scale.
Every person that lived, right? Let's say. Let's say the Dor HaFlaga. The Dor HaFlaga was a terrible generation, on one hand. On the other hand, they introduced something into the world that enabled the Gula to occur. Stoim was a terrible generation, but their judgment, I don't know if Stoim introduced anything into the world, but the judgment that was brought upon Stoim as a result also introduced something into the world that brought it closer to the Gula. Right? So every tzaddik that lived, whatever input he brought with him, he brought some kind of a seed that planted something towards the Gula. And every Rasha that lived also planted a seed, because like I said, the negative energy will be flipped on him. What I don't know, though, coming back to this idea that Hashem doesn't want, what he said, Hashem doesn't want for 6,000 years to be one Hanhaga and then a sudden switch to another Hanhaga, that it has to be transition from one to the other. We have Dora Mabul, right? Dora Mabul, this is described very much like, okay, we tried this, boys, didn't work. Let's try something else. Here's the flood. We'll start with you, and we'll start a new program with you. It didn't look like a transition of any sort, right? It certainly says, Hashem looked at it and he says, "You guys are disappointment. Let's try again." So, it's a very nice, beautiful picture that he's painting of how all the puzzle pieces are going to suddenly fit together, right? But Dora Mabul doesn't for me personally doesn't fit well into that picture. But I've always struggled to understand the Dora Mabul, so I don't know.
But don't forget about Og, the one who started the ark.
Okay.
So, if you think about the picture, something like missing, but if you take him in the picture, like he's the one who made it through 1 time, so there was something there. It was some kind of transition, kind of.
All right.
Opportunity of transition.
Okay, I don't know why you have to come on to Og. Noach was there too. Noach was also...
Noach was clear cut. He survived, they all died. But there was also one who was...
All right.
So there was some kind of transition, something.
Could be. All right, I don't know. Okay, well, so that's, again, we did not get as far as I thought we were going to get. What time is it? Yeah, I think it's time to call it a night, yeah? Okay, I'm just going to read one sentence, even though we're going to start from this sentence next time. But just that, because the sentence summarizes everything till now. So what comes out is Hashem is using these two midos, these two aspects of Hashgacha constantly, right? He's using both of these programs at the same time. And both of these, again, Hashgacha is he put into the nature of the world, of the foundations of the world. Achas midas hascharva oynish. One is the midah of reward and punishment. He hanhagas hatov v'ara, which is the hanhaga of good and evil. B'shikul echad l'schus u'lechoiva, balanced equally for merit and for obligation. V'nikres hanhaga zois hanhagas mishpat, and that hanhaga is called hanhagas mishpat, hanhaga of judgment. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yoshev v'dan kol ha'olam kulo lefi ma'aseim hatovim v'ha'roim. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is constantly judging the world based on their actions, good and bad. V'asya toich mishpatoi zeh, and comes out from within of that mishpat, of that judgment, midas tuvoi, Hashem's goodness, asher lefi chayk shlemusa, which is in accordance to His perfection, lefi inyan mamshalta, which is in accordance of His total domination, shebekoichehu ro'etzel esakin eskol hanivroim, through which power of His dominion He wants to be misakin all of the creations. Okay, So both of these programs are constantly running. They're built into the DNA of the world. The hanhaga of the mishpat and the kind of override of the mamshal.
Yeah.
They're both present. Okay, and we'll have to see how he goes into that further. Okay, fine. Shkoyach.